Okay, picking up with the libation bearers. One thing to remember from the lecture I did the other day is bear in mind all three of these plays are ultimately about the theme of justice. What is justice? Is justice the kind of justice that was portrayed, for example, in Agamemnon? Totally retributive, totally vengeance, okay? Clytemnestra kills her husband. She says it's for her dead daughter, Iphigenia. What is one of the things, however, that we discover when we reach the end of the play? Well, it's partially for Iphigenia. It's partially on Aeschylus' part for his dead brothers that were killed by his uncle Atreus and such. But it's also for what? I mean, what do both Clytemnestra and Aeschylus talk about at the end of the play? Power. They're talking about power. They now have the power. They're going to rule. And in fact, even the chorus acknowledges that. And the chorus says, you know, they're going to set themselves up as tyrants. Now, I also said that you could look at the entire Oresteia as kind of all three plays taken together as a single play, a larger play with 3 acts. And each of the individual plays is an individual act. So the Agamemnon opens up the play and sets out the main conflict, okay? And if you remember, we discussed tragedy and comedy. Well, if you think of the 3 plays taken together as a single play in 3 acts, then we don't have overall a tragedy. We have a comedy, okay? How so? Well, when we discussed comedy, I talked about how, you know, when a comedy begins, you have a rupture in society. The killing of the returning king is a pretty big rupture in society. So then what happens? You have the falling action, okay? You have the climax, the turn, and then the rising action. So the falling action and the complication, the conflict, that's the killing of Agamemnon in the first play. The second play, Libation Bearers, the one we're starting right now, and we might get to the Eumenides. The second play represents when we get to that climax, but here it's the inverse pyramid. It's the upside down pyramid. So the turn comes, you know, goes down like this and then starts to go up, okay? And then we'll get the resolution in the third part, in the Eumenides. So let's begin with the libation bearers, and let's start with a question. Who are the libation bearers? That is, the title is telling us that it is about people bearing libations. Libations were prayers and offerings to the dead. You would go to a tomb, you would pour out some wine and some grain. Your, you know, Orestes we're going to see cuts off a couple locks of hair. That's a traditional offering also, you know, but the wine would be poured on the ground, mixed with the grain and such. So these are offerings to the dead. Well, who are the libation bearers? Well, look at who the play opens with. It opens with Orestes and Pylades. They come, they offer libations, so might refer to them. And then the chorus shows up with Electra, and they offer libations. Now, Orestes is offering libations on behalf of himself for his dead father. Electra is offering libations on behalf of herself. The chorus is offering the libations on behalf of Clytemnestra, and we'll find out why in just a minute. So you have, you know, as it were, 3 groups of libation bearers here, all right? Each with slightly differing motives, but notice, or let me rephrase that. Each offering libations on behalf of themselves, but in their libations, what are they each doing? They're appealing to Agamemnon. That is, even the chorus on behalf of Clytemnestra is appealing to Agamemnon, and we'll find out why in a minute. So when the play opens, we see Orestes come in, and he calls out to Hermes, Lord of the dead, you who watch over the powers of my fathers, be my savior and stand by my claim. Well, what is his claim? He's the son of the dead king. His claim is not only his appeal to his father, but it's also his claim ultimately, when you get to the end of the third play, as it were, ultimately to the throne, to the kingship. He's next in line. Clytemnestra should not have gotten the rule. And bear in mind, this play occurs several years after the action in Agamemnon. So he goes on and says, here's my own soil that I walk. I have come home, and by this mounded grave bank, I invoke my father to hear, to listen. Okay? Now, he's essentially saying, help me, dead father. Now, he's not expecting his father to rise out of the ground, all that kind of stuff. But he's just, he's calling out to his ancestry, as it were, to be with me, give me strength, etc., etc. Okay, we're going to skip a bit and pick up on page 82. And Orestes notices the chorus coming and these women coming out, and they're carrying these urns, and he's like, what are they doing? Line 13. I think they bring these urns to pour in my father's honor to appease the powers below. Now, the powers below aren't the dead, and the powers below aren't his father. The powers below are the Furies. The Furies are those kind of elemental beings, offspring of the original two primeval gods, so to speak, Uranos and Gaia, okay, whose whole function was to exact vengeance, to hound the living who have committed primarily wrongful deaths, murderers, okay, until they die. It's to chase them ultimately to death and such, okay? And he says, I think they're bringing these to placate, to slake the thirst, to use a word that was used in the previous play, slake, to slake the thirst of the Furies. Right? So he's like, can I be right? And then he says, and that's Electra. Zeus, line 17, grant me vengeance for my father's murder. Stand and fight beside me of your grace. So notice, this is justice. Let me kill my father's killer. Okay? This is the kind of justice that you see in what are called honor societies. That is, if you touch somebody in my family, I'm going to touch somebody in your family. All right? If you strike at us, we're going to strike back at you. And one of the things you'll see in terms of the movement of the plot from the first play to the end of the final play is we get this transformation of this idea of justice from blood for blood, eye for an eye, to the idea of an impartial jury. And justice must be rational. Justice must be fair. So there's this moral standard that gets introduced into the idea of justice, rather than just, canceling out. Blood for blood is an idea of canceling out, one wrong with essentially another wrong, right? But when we get to the end of the plays, what we really have is an appeal to wisdom. okay? An appeal to wisdom in the person of Pallas Athena, ultimately, right? So Orestes and Pylades stand aside so that they can listen to and hear what the chorus says, okay? So the chorus comes in with Electra, and the chorus says, bottom of page 82, with antistrophe A, line 32. Terror, the dream diviner of this house, belled clear, that is, made it very well known, shuddered the skin, blew wrath from sleep, a cry in night's obscure watches, a voice of fear deep in the house, dropping dead weight in women's inner chambers. Clytemnestra had a bad dream. That's what that means. And they who read the dream meanings and spoke under guarantee of God told how under earth dead men held a grudge still and smoldered at their murderers. Okay? So, Clytemnestra has a dream or a vision. She asks for aid in interpreting that dream or vision, and someone, prophet maybe, explains to her the dead are dissatisfied, that the dead hold a grudge. Okay? The dead specifically here meaning Agamemnon and possibly Cassandra. Okay? So, Strophe B then speaks and says, line 48, what can wash off the blood once spilled upon the ground? Now, you know, when you think about it, that's a rather interesting question. Because what they've been attempting to do all the way up until this time, that is from the beginning of society up until this time, is if blood was spilled, well, what do? You spill more blood. And the chorus here is asking, what can wash off the blood? That is, what can make the ground pure? You don't make it pure by pouring more blood upon it. It just makes it redder. O hearth soaked in sorrow, O wreckage of a fallen house. Well, partly what's being discussed there is not just Agamemnon's death. It's Agamemnon's death. It's Thyestes' two children's death. It's Pelops' death, even though the gods brought him back to life. It's what's going to be called, might have been said in Agamemnon, will definitely be said in this play, the curse born in the race, the curse in the house of Tantalus, okay? And so what the chorus is asking is, how can this house be cured of its stain? All right? So they continue talking, we get strophe and antistrophe, goes back and forth, and then Electra speaks. And Electra says, page 84, line 87 and following, what shall I say as I pour out these outpourings of sorrow? How say the good word? How make my prayer to my Father? Shall I say I bring it to the man beloved from a loving wife and mean my mother? No, because she realizes, she knows that's not true. I have not the daring to say this, nor know what else to say as I pour this liquid on my Father's tomb. That is, she's just pouring. She says, I have no words to express. I can't say this is for my mother because she's the one who caused you to be dead. Shall I say this sentence, regular in human use? That is, shall I offer this platitude? Grant good return to those who send to you these flowers of honor, gifts to match the evil that... Grant good return. Be beneficial to those who offer you these gifts. And who are those who offer you these gifts? The one who killed you. She's like, well, that won't work. Or quiet and dishonored, line 96. As my father died, shall I pour out this offering for the ground to drink? Or shall I just be mute, like essentially Agamemnon was when he was killed? And go like one who empties garbage out of doors and turn my eyes and throw the vessel far away. So notice Electra is saying, and I guess I misspoke earlier, Electra is saying she's not offering this for her. This is for Clytemnestra. She is part of the libation bearers sent by Clytemnestra. And so she says, the libations are garbage. Shall I just throw it on the ground? Which, kind of according to Greek religious belief, didn't be accepted. It has to be offered in quote unquote, good faith, in good belief, if you will. So she says to the chorus, dear friends in this deliberation, stay with me. We hold a common hatred in this house. And I think by that she means we all together hate Clytemnestra. And then, very bottom of 84, line 103. The day of destiny waits for the free man as well as for the man enslaved beneath an alien hand. See, the chorus are slave women. They're women of Troy. So she says, the day of destiny awaits for you slaves just as it does for me. She's a free woman. What's the day of destiny? Death. Death comes to all, she's saying. Right? So, the chorus leader says, if you want me to speak, I'll speak in reverence for your father. And she says, speak. And the chorus leader says, top of page 85, line 109, say words of grace for those of goodwill. Say words of grace for those of goodwill. Right? So that wouldn't be for Clytemnestra. Who would it be for? Well, it would be for Electra. It would be, I think the implication is, for the chorus, Electra. Whom of those closest to me can I call my friend? Chorus, yourself first. That is, you. You are your closest friend. Right? The New Testament says, love your neighbor as yourself. You have to love yourself first. Interesting. Yourself first. Well, then who comes after that? All who hate Aeschylus after that. That is, you can call everyone else friend who hates Aeschylus. Well, that's that old idea, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So anybody who is Aeschylus' enemy, that is someone you can offer words of graceful goodwill on behalf of. So Electra says, you mean for you and for me? Yes, now you understand. Electra, no one else? Line 114, is there some other we should bring in on our side? Chorus leader, remember Orestes, though he wanders far away. Remember your brother. Pray for him. Okay? That was good. I like that. Also, remember the murderers and against them. So notice there, the chorus leader is saying, also in your prayer, remember the murderers, and then throws in that and against them. That is, don't remember them in prayer of goodwill, of seeking grace for them. And Electra kind of interrupts. Well, what shall I say? Guide and instruct my ignorance. And the chorus leader says, finishing the and against them, invoke the coming of some man or more than man. Invoke, call up the coming of what? An avenger. Someone who will perform vengeance, or more than man. The or more than man, that's implying the Furies. Call forth those elemental beings who will hound Clytemnestra and Aeschylus to their deaths. 120, Electra, to come to judge them or to give them punishment. And that's kind of interesting because she's implying that there's a difference between judging them and punishing them. See, total retributive justice doesn't judge. It doesn't weigh wrong and right. It merely acts. It merely kills. Right? It doesn't ask, well, is this the right thing to do? It shoots first and then asks questions. And the chorus leader says, top of 86, here's what you should say. 1 to kill them for the life they took. Death for death, period. But Electra's not sure. I can ask this and not be wrong in the God's eyes. Of course, to hurt your enemy when he struck first. That is, of course you can. The chorus is saying, this is justice. So, page 86, Electra does. And what does she do? She offers this prayer, line 124, and I'm probably going to read quite a bit. Hermes, Lord of the dead, help me. Announce my prayers to the charmed spirits underground who watch over my father's house, that they may hear. Tell earth herself, that's Gaia, who brings all things to birth, who gives them strength and gathers their big yield into herself at last. I myself pour these lustral waters to the dead and speak and call upon my father. And here's what she wants her father to hear. Pity me, pity your own Orestes. How shall we be lords in our house? Notice she's raising there the idea that we've been displaced. We've been pushed out. We have been sold and go as wanderers because our mother bought herself for us a man, Aeschylus, he who helped her hand to cut you down. Now I am what a slave is, and Orestes lives outcast from his great properties. So she's saying, I'm merely a slave like these other chorus women, and Orestes is an exile. While they go proud, they, Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, go proud in the high style and luxury of what you worked to win. That is, while they enjoy everything that you built up during your long years of kingship. By some good fortune, let Orestes come back home. Such is my prayer, my father. Hear me, hear me. Now notice the implication of one of the things she's saying. I, a mere woman, cannot exact the vengeance. See, that's one of the problems being depicted in the play of Clytemnestra doing that. Because, again, women had no standing ultimately in society. So she's saying, send Orestes, he can, right? Such is my prayer, my father, hear me, and for myself, grant that I be more temperate of heart than my mother. That is, and please, don't let me become like my mother, that I act with purer hand. Such are my prayers for us. That is, those are the beneficial, the words of goodwill that I'm asking on behalf of myself and Orestes. But for our enemies, for Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, Father, I pray that your avenger come, that they who killed you shall be killed in turn as they deserve. Vengeance. Okay? For us, bring blessings up into the world. For them, let earth and conquering justice and all gods beside give aid. So, be nice to us, kill them. Right? So they pour out their libations and such. And Electra then notices, page 87, middle of the page, line 166, something has happened here. And they're like, what? Someone has cut a strand of hair and laid it on the tomb. And there's a mark, right? And Electra says, it's clear what this is. And the chorus says, explain. Top of page 88. Around line 173, I guess. Electra says, no one could have cut off this strand except myself. Well, that doesn't make sense. She hasn't cut her hair. So what is she saying? This lock of hair looks just like my hair. So the chorus says, can it be a secret gift from Orestes? Did Orestes dare to come back here? How could this be? Okay. Page 89. Electra says, line 195, I wish it had the kind voice of a messenger so that my mind would not be torn in two. That is, I wish this lock of hair, or these locks of hair, could speak. Why? Because she's doubtful. She doesn't know what the truth of the matter is. 201. The gods know and we call upon the gods. They know how we are spun in circles like seafarers. In what storms? That is, the gods know everything. The gods have all the answers. The gods know what fate ordains for humanity. The gods don't control fate. The gods can't stop fate. But they can tell humans what fate has in store. She goes on, line 205. Oh, but here's another side, and she sees the footsteps. And she steps into the footstep and says, look, they're just like mine. And then Orestes steps forward and says, pray for what is to come, line 211 or so. Pray for what is to come. It's kind of like saying, pray for fate and tell the gods that they have brought your former prayers to pass. Pray for what I am setting out to do and thank the gods. Pray for success. Okay? So they kind of go back and forth. Top of page 90, Electra says, how am I given an answer to my prayers? How does this answer what I've prayed for? He says, look at me. Look for no one closer to you than I. What did she ask for? She asked for someone close to her, a close friend. He says, no one's closer. He's her brother. Are you really? Line 224, Orestes? Can I call you by that name? Bear in mind, Orestes has been away since he was a child. Okay? He was sent to be raised by somebody else. It was part of Aeschylus and Clytemnestra's plan, to take the throne and such. And he says, yes, I am. Line 235 at the bottom of that page, she says, O dearest treasured darling, my father's house, hope of the seed of our salvation, wept for, trust your strength of hand. So you're the dearest, you're the most treasured thing in our father's house. You are the hope of the seed of our salvation. Notice, he's not the salvation, he's the hope of the germination. He will produce what will be the salvation. She says, I wept for you, and then trust your strength of hand and win your father's house again. That is, march off to victory. O bright beloved present, you bring back 4 lives to me. How? Father, to call you father is constraint to fact, and all the love I could have borne my mother turned your way. That is, when I see you, I see my father. The love I bore my mother, I don't anymore, so that goes back to you. For a pitilessly slaughtered sister, Iphigenia, that is seen in you, and now you're my brother. So she's kind of saying, you are the summation of the entirety of our house. Orestes then calls out, Zeus, that's an invocation. He is invoking Zeus, calling on Zeus. Gaze on all that we try to do. Behold the orphan children of the eagle father, that is the lordly, the kingly father, etc., etc. Line 255. Now let me back up. 252. I with my sister, whom I name Electra here, stand in your sight, children whose father is lost. We both are driven in exile from the house that should be ours. And then these are the lines I really wanted to get to. If you destroy these fathers' fledglings who gave you sacrifice and high honor, that is, if you destroy us who have praised you, who have sacrificed to you, who have shown honor to you, then what's going to happen? From what hand like his shall you be given the sacred feast, which is your right? His, Agamemnon's. From what kingly hand, he's saying, will you be given the sacred feast, which is your right? If you kill us, who will properly honor and worship you? If you kill us, if you allow us to die, you will be harming yourself. Destroy the eagle's brood, and you have no more means to send your signs to mortals for their strong belief. Nor, if the stump rot through on this our royal tree, shall it sustain your altars. If our family dies out, your altars will remain vacant. From a little thing you can raise up a house to grandeur, though it's now seen overthrown. What does he mean by though a little thing, or from a little thing? Well, that's Orestes showing his humility. If you remember from Agamemnon, why was Agamemnon afraid to step on the red carpet that was reserved for the gods? To walk on the red carpet is an act of hubris. And so Orestes is saying, I'm nothing. I'm nothing. And from nothing, you can raise a house to grandeur. Okay? So, Chorus speaks, and then Orestes does. Line 269. The big strength of Apollo's oracle will not forsake me, for he charged me to win through this hazard. What does he mean by that? This hazard, by the way, means this trial, this attempt. He's saying, Apollo ordered me to do this. The god of inspiration, the god of poetry, ordered me to kill my mother. Top of page 92, line 274 and following. He told me to cut them down in their own fashion, that is, to cut them down the way they cut down Agamemnon. Turn to bull-like fury in the loss of my estates. He said that else, that is, if I don't do that, if I don't exact vengeance on Clytemnestra and Aegisthus, I must myself pay penalty with my own life and suffer much grim punishment. Spoke of the angers that come out of the ground from those beneath who turn against men. And then he goes on from 280 down several lines, and he talks about all the things that he will suffer from the gods if he doesn't do what Apollo commands him to do. All these psychological terrors and tortures and such. All right? So, pick up with 297. He says, shall I not trust such oracles as this? Such oracles, such prophecies, such divinations. Even if I do not trust them, here is work that must be done. Here, numerous desires converge to drive me on. That is, he's not acting out of a single motive, he's got multiple motives. The god's urgency, that's one. That is, the god's urging Orestes. Grief for my father, that's one, so there's two. With these, the loss of my estates. I'm the one who should be king. And even if he's not talking about actual kingship, talking about the loss of estates means the loss of my property. What else? Also the thought that these, my citizens, there's the kingship. Most high renowned of men who toppled Troy with hearts of valor must go subject to this pair of women. So he's thinking about 1, Apollo's command, 2, his own grief for his father, 3, the loss of his property, 4, the loss of his kingship, that the fact that his citizens, that is, he's talking about the citizens almost as being his property, are subject to these two women. And notice how he has just emasculated Aegisthus. He's just castrated him. Okay? What else? Since his heart is really female, or if not, that soon will show. That is, and if it's not literally, I'm going to show pretty soon that it is. And so the chorus then responds. Bear in mind, the chorus often comments on what has happened previously and or foreshadows what's going to come. Almighty destinies. These are like the fates, if you want. Okay? By the will of Zeus, let these things be done in the turning of justice. See, when justice is kind of personified, it's this idea of a wheel. Okay? In the Middle Ages, we will see justice doesn't literally get replaced with the idea of fortune, but it's kind of metaphorically replaced with the idea of fortune. But here the idea is justice's wheel, it's always turning, always turning. So what does that mean? What goes around comes around. Modern incarnation of that idea, karma. You do something bad, and it's eventually going to catch up with you. Chaucer puts it in, I can't remember which tale, murder will out. It's going to be revealed, okay? So the chorus goes on, 309. In return for the word of hatred spoken, let hate be a word fulfilled. The spirit of right. Now that's different than justice. The spirit of right, that is moral oughtness, if you want. Trying to think of another way to put that. Moral authority. The spirit of right cries out aloud and extracts atonement due. But then we get what the chorus is saying is that what they consider to be that right. Blood stroke for the stroke of blood shall be paid. Okay? Who acts shall suffer. You kill, you'll be killed. So speaks the voice of the age-old wisdom. What's meant by age-old wisdom? It's how it's always been done. It's how it always should be done. This is our culture. This is the way we've done things. This is how it should continue being done. Okay? So, Orestes, the chorus, and Electra, they kind of go back and forth. And Electra asks, top of page 94, line 338, what here is good, what escape from grief, can we out-wrestle disaster? That is, can we escape our fate? That's kind of what she's asking. Chorus. Yet from such as this, the god, if he will, can work out strains that are fairer. See, Electra doesn't see a way out of the conundrum. She doesn't see a way out of the, tit for tat. And the chorus is saying, but the gods might be able to work things out. And notice the chorus says the god, if he will. Now, that might be referring to Zeus. That might be referring to Apollo. Okay? They keep going back and forth, which we're going to skip a bit. And let's see here. Page 96. Electra speaking at the top of the page, about line 398 or so. She's speaking about Zeus and such. She asks him to pound down his fist upon them, that is on Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. And then she says, I ask for right. There, notice in your translation, right isn't capitalized. She just means, I'm asking for what has always been right in the past. That is, kill them. Hear me, Earth. Earth is older than Zeus. Okay, in the Greek system, you've got I don't think I have this on my handout. Let me see. Try and share the screen. I don't know if I put this on here or not. No, I did not. In the Greek system, think of the eldest gods as Uranos, Ouranos, and Gaia, spelled either Gaia or Gaea, right? Their offspring are the Titans, led by Kronos, etc. Okay, the Titans are overthrown. Uranos and Gaia are overthrown by the Titans. The Titans are then overthrown by the Olympian gods, Zeus and Hera and the others. Okay, so she's calling out to kind of the eldest of the gods, Earth. Hear me, grandeurs of darkness. Those are the Furies. She's saying, listen to me, help me, all right? So they keep going back and forth. Electra then on page 97, top of the page, line 421, she says, we are bloody like the wolf and savage born from the savage mother. Why? Because they're the offspring of Atreus, or you can go back even farther. They're the offspring of Tantalus, and Tantalus killed his own son. He's brought back from the dead, and then Atreus kills his brother's children. And, the curse of Thyestes on the house of Atreus. She's kind of saying, like, this is part of our nature. Now, interestingly, okay, this is obviously it's ancient Greek literature. It has nothing to do with the Hebraic, Judeo-Christian tradition, so to speak. But it's interesting because what are they essentially talking about? They're talking about human nature. They're talking about fallen human nature, that there is something within that, gets passed on, that causes people to do the wrong things, to do the bad things. The hamartia that Aristotle talks about every tragic hero has, They keep talking, they go back and forth, and let's see here. Page 98, Orestes and Electra and the chorus go back and forth. And we'll pick up on page 99. The chorus says these lines. Line 466 and following. I'm going to turn to that in another edition I have, because I want to read it in this other edition also. This is strophe L. O pain grown into the race and blood-dripping stroke and grinding cry of disaster, moaning an impossible weight to bear, sickness that fights all remedy. Here in the house resides the cure for this. The this, that's referring to the pain grown into the race, the blood-dripping stroke, the grinding cry of disaster, the moaning and impossible weight to bear, the sickness, etc. There's a cure for that in the house. Not to be brought from outside, never from others, but within ourselves, through the raw, brutal bloodshed. How? We can be the cure. How? By canceling out Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. Here's the song sung to the gods beneath us. Arise, O Furies, and help us, So then they're chanting, hear then, you blessed ones under the ground, and answer these prayers with strength on our side. Free gift for your children's conquest. That is, arise and help the children, Orestes and Electra, cure the ills of the house, okay? The other translation reads, and this is by Robert Fagles, oh, the torment bred in the race, the grinding scream of death, and the stroke that hits the vein, The hemorrhage none can stanch, the grief, the curse no man can bear. But there is a cure in the house, and not outside it, no. Not from others, but from them, their bloody strife. We sing to you, dark gods beneath the earth. Now hear you blissful powers underground, answer the call, send help. Bless the children, give them triumph now. If any of you are very familiar with the Harry Potter novels, those lines might strike an echo. That's because J.K. Rowling appends those lines at the beginning of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the final book of the series. Right? Why? Because that book is about, essentially avenging all the deaths that have occurred before and bringing the cure, which is ultimately the end of, Lord Voldemort, the person who wants to flee from death, the person who is unwilling to face and accept the inevitability of death. Okay? So they call out to the Furies to arise. So Orestes then speaks to his father, and Electra does also. And they go back and forth and keep saying these things that, they call out for aid and such. Page 101. I'm going to try and skip through some stuff quickly. The chorus leader says, line 510, none can find fault with the length of this discourse you drew out to show honor to a grave and fade and wept. The rest is action. That is enough talk. Now go do. Since your heart is set that way, now you must strike and prove your destiny. That is, again, okay, we've had a good long talk. We've discussed the options, so to speak. We understand what your mentality is and what your motives are. You've prayed to the gods. You've honored your father. Now get busy. Now go do it. Orestes. So, that is, you're right. But I am not wandering from my strict course when I ask, why she sent these libations? Why did Clytemnestra force you to bring these offerings? Now, why does he ask this question? For what cause she acknowledges too late a crime for which there is no cure? Why does she now acknowledge that she was wrong? And that might be Orestes grasping at straws to try to find a way to maybe not have to do what he knows he has to do. Okay? So answer me this question. And the chorus leader says, oh, I know that. 523. It was the dreams. The godless woman, okay, they're calling her godless because the chorus is asserting there, implying, I should say, that she does not heed the gods. She does not pay attention to the rights of the gods, to the obligations of the gods, to, what the gods essentially have told humanity how to act and behave. We're going to see that idea come up in another play also. The godless woman had been shaken in the night by floating terrors when she sent these offerings. Orestes, what was the dream? And they tell him she dreamed she'd given birth to a snake. And he's like, okay, what's the point of that? That is, how was the dream interpreted? She wrapped it warm in clothing. Orestes a little monster. It bit her nipple while it's, suckled and such. Okay. And Orestes goes, oh, okay, line 540, page 102. This dream is for me. I'm the snake. I divine it, and it coheres all in one piece. If this snake came out of the same place whence I came, and if she wrapped it in robes as she wrapped me, and if its jaws gaped wide around the breast that suckled me, and if, notice all the ifs, all the conditions, and if it stained the intimate milk with an outburst of blood, so that for fright and pain she cried aloud, it follows then. It is logically necessary to say that as she nursed this hideous thing of prophecy, she must be cruelly murdered. I must turn snake to kill her. Chorus, yep, you're right. Okay. So, Orestes tells him, here's what our plan is. Pylades and I will dress up as wanderers. We'll come in and we'll ask for aid and assistance. Line, page 103, he says we'll use a different dialect. We'll speak in a different language, as it were. 565, if none at the door will take us in kindly because the house is in a curse of ills, we're going to stay there. That is, we're going to stay there at the gate, at the door, and we're going to keep crying out, why does Aegisthus keep the suppliant turned away from his gates if he is hereabouts and knows of this? Okay. Why is that important? That's important because in ancient Greek society, and in fact, this isn't just ancient Greek society, this goes back to Indo-European, which I'll maybe talk about at another point. You have what's called the law of hospitality. In ancient Greek, it's pronounced something like xenia. It's spelled Xenia. Modern English, it would be pronounced xenia, like xenophobe, okay? Someone who's afraid of others. The Zen means, the Xen means others, foreigners, outsiders, aliens, such, okay? So you have this hospitality which requires an individual to open his or her door to the wanderer who comes knocking. Somebody you don't know, somebody you've never seen. Somebody comes, knocks on your door, they're wandering, they're traveling, they need a place for the night. According to this unwritten, and it is unwritten, it's a customary obligation, but according to this obligation, the gods oblige you to open your door to that person for the evening, provide him or her food, shelter, clothing, etc., and send him or her on their way the next day with food and water, etc., provisions that they need. In fact, it even requires that if the person who comes and knocks on your door at night is your enemy. That is, if you're in open hostility and your enemy comes and knock, 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 you're required to give your enemy a place to stay and then send them safely on their way the next morning. So by raising this question, Orestes is suggesting that Aegisthus will violate this law. He will violate this customary obligation, this customary responsibility, showing how against the gods he really is. Okay? But he says, but if I once come across the doorstone of the outer gates and find my man seated upon my father's throne, that is, if I am allowed in, and I find Aegisthus on my father's throne, then before he can even say, where does the stranger come from, I'm going to kill him. I'm just going to out and out kill him. Okay? So he says, bottom of that page, 583 or so. And now I call upon the God who stands close to, I call upon the God who stands close to look on and guide the actions of my sword. So he leaves. The chorus goes back and forth quite a bit. And Clytemnestra comes out. Okay. Excuse me, before Clytemnestra comes out, we see Orestes come back in with Pylades. They're disguised as travelers and such. And he comes out, Orestes does, and cries out at the front of the palace, line 655, 653. In there, inside, anyone hear me knocking, blah, 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 blah. If Aegisthus is here, let him welcome, friendly visitors. The servant says, I'm coming, all right? So Orestes announces, where he's from, etc. He wants a place to stay. And he tells them, line 680, page 107. By the way, tell Orestes' parents Okay, bear in mind, he's pretending to be a traveler. He's pretending to not know that Agamemnon is dead. Tell Orestes' parents that he is dead. Tell Clytemnestra Orestes is dead. Don't let it slip your mind. And if they want to bring him back home or bury him, you know, bring that word to me. Okay. So Clytemnestra says, "What's this?" And so they talk back and forth, and they go back inside, and the nurse comes out. And the nurse says, page 109, you know, I've been told to come out to find Aegisthus. Why? Line 735. So that he can come and hear as man to man in more detail this news that they have brought. And she put a sad face on before the servants. That is, this is the nurse describing Clytemnestra. She put a sad face on before the servants. What does that mean, she put a sad face on? She pretended to be sad, to hide the smile inside her eyes over this work that has been done so happily for her. She's saying, inside, Clytemnestra is rejoicing. If Orestes is dead, then the dream about the snake cannot come true. Though on this house the misery is now complete from the plain story that the stranger men have brought. That is, the nurse thinks the misery has now reached its total point. The cup is totally full of misery. Why? Agamemnon's dead, and now Orestes is dead. Because the nurse isn't clued into what's really going on. And then the nurse says, oh man, Aegisthus, he's going to be pleased. He'll be really happy. She says, but not me. Poor unhappy me, line 743. All my long-standing mixture of misfortunes, hard burden enough here in this house of Atreus, when it befell me, made the heart ache in my breast. Why? She remembers Orestes as a baby. She brought him up, etc., etc. Okay? So the nurse and the chorus go back and forth, and the chorus says, before you go speak to Orestes, before you go speak to Aegisthus, tell me, were you supposed to tell him to come back with his bodyguards or armed? And the nurse says, I don't understand. What do you mean? Was he to come with bodyguards? Page 110, line 768 or so. She said to bring his followers, the men at arms. She goes, chorus leader, don't tell him that. If you hate our master, that is, if you hate Aegisthus, don't tell him to come with his men at arms. Just tell him to come as quickly as he can. And cheerfully, happily. Why? Because if he comes happily, if you tell him to come happily, then he will think nothing's wrong. Nurse, so you're happy over what I've told you? Maybe. Zeus might turn our evil wind to good, line 775. That is, Zeus might bring good out of this evil. How? Orestes is gone. Chorus leader, not yet. Maybe he's not. Do you have more? No, just go take your message. You'll find out later. So the nurse goes off. And Aegisthus comes out. He tells us, I was summoned to come. I'm told there are strangers here. They bring the news of the death of Orestes. And he asks, line 843, how shall I pass upon these rumors? Top of page 113. That is, can this be true? Is this the living truth? He asked the chorus, do you know anything? Yeah, that's what we heard. Go inside, go in the palace. Hear it there, straight from the messengers. Yes, I do. I want to question this messenger. So he goes in, and the chorus chants, Zeus, Zeus, what shall I say? Or make a beginning of prayer for the gods' aid. My will is good, but how shall I speak to match my need? That is, come on, Zeus, let it happen. Bring this to fruition. We hear a shriek from within the palace, and the chorus says, listen, it goes, but how? What has been done in the house? Notice they don't hear Aegisthus cry out, ah, I'm Aegisthus, I am slain. They hear a shriek. The shriek may not be Aegisthus, it might be Orestes. The chorus leader, stand we aside until the work is done, for so we shall not seem to be accountable in this foul business. That's the chorus leader saying, let's kind of step aside and go off to the edge here. Why? Because until we know how this is going to play out, we should act like we are totally innocent. This is the chorus leader trying to, straddle the fence and not take any responsibility. Okay? A follower of Aegisthus comes out from the house and says, Aegisthus is slain, and here comes Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra wants to know what's going on. And the follower tells her, because she hasn't been in the palace, follower tells her, I tell you, the living are being killed by the dead ones. Well, how can that happen? Well, they've been told Orestes is dead, and now he's, obviously not. So Orestes comes out and says, you're next. Page 115, line 892 or so. In 896, Clytemnestra addresses Orestes. Hold, my son, take pity, child, before this breast, where many a time, you would feed, etc., etc. Not me. And Orestes looks to Pylades. What should I do? Be shamed to kill my mother? Pylades. What about the oracles of Apollo? Notice, Pylades just says, what did Apollo tell you to do? What of sworn oaths? That is, even if you don't think of the oaths that you swore at Delphi, what about the oaths that you just swore minutes ago, maybe hours ago, at your father's tomb? Count all men hateful to you rather than the gods. You swear an oath to the gods, you better follow that up. You fulfill that no matter what. You're right. Your advice is good. And so he turns to Clytemnestra. So you got to wonder, what's Clytemnestra doing while he's talking to Pylades? Is she sitting there going, come on, Orestes, make the right. My purpose is to kill you over his body. You thought him bigger than my father while he lived. Die then and sleep beside him, since he is the man you love, and he you should have loved got only your hate. Okay? And she says, oh, but I raised you. Let me grow old with you. He says, you killed my father. Would you make your own with me? And she says, destiny. I was fated to do that. And he said, yep, and destiny has worked this death for you as well. And then she pulls her ace out. A mother has her curse, child. Are you not afraid? Well, what's that curse? Even in ancient Greek society, it wasn't good to kill your parents. Patricide, killing of a father. Matricide, killing of a mother. I guess it'd be parenticide, killing of them both, She says, careful, careful. If I curse you, the Furies will come after you. Are you not afraid? He says, no, you bore me and threw me away to a hard life. I sent you to a friend's house. I was born of a free father. You sold me. That is, you sold me essentially into slavery. I was born a free man. Really, I was born the son of a king. Okay? Top of the next page, she says, I think you intend to kill me. He's like, duh. He says, no, It will be you who kill yourself. It will not be I. What does he mean? You killed yourself when you killed Agamemnon. You were merely a dead woman walking for the last several years. Clytemnestra, careful. Your mother's curse, like dogs, will drag you down. So, you kill me, I'm going to curse you. How shall I escape my father's curse if I fail here? He's torn. Mother's curse, father's curse. She says, you're the snake. He says, yep. You killed and it was wrong, line 930. Now suffer wrong. And he and Pylades take her into the palace. The doors get thrown open after the chorus speaks, and we have Orestes standing over the bodies of Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. This is the top of page 119. While attendants display the net-like garment in which Clytemnestra had entangled Agamemnon, in which she herself displayed after his murder. In other words, she wove her net of deceit that entangled Agamemnon, and now Orestes displays it and says, what happens? She got caught in her own net. Shakespeare uses this image, kind of, and he says, it's the sport of the engineer to be hoisted by his own petard. This is from Hamlet. Petard and the engineer are referring to an explosive designed by a bomb maker. You made your bed, now you have to sleep in it, right? So Orestes, gives a big long speech, talks about how his mother got what she deserved. And then line 989, he mentions Aegisthus and says, for him, I take no count. He has his seducer's punishment no more than law. I'm not afraid of any curse from him. He's nothing to me. But she who plotted this foul death against the man by whom she carried the weight of children, he says, what does she seem to be? She's a snake, a viper, etc., etc. Line 1005. He finishes that long speech and says, may no such partner as she was come to live with me. It's kind of like, please, gods, don't let me have a wife like her. Sooner let God destroy me with no children born, which is, I think, at least rather interesting, because that might be Orestes' way of saying, let the curse of Thyestes on Atreus end with me. Let me die childless. Let our family line die out here. Right? Chorus. But the pitiful work. This is bad stuff. Dismal the death that was your ending. They're talking kind of to Clytemnestra. He is left alive. Orestes. Pain flowers for him. What does that mean? He thought he's experienced pain before. Pain of banishment, exile, that kind of stuff. No. Pain is going to bloom. Orestes. Did she do it or not? Orestes hears that little comment by the chorus, and he's kind of like, wait, are you saying she wasn't guilty? He says, look at this robe here. It's got my father's blood in it and such. So, chorus still chants on. There is no mortal man who shall turn unhurt his life's course to an end not marred. There is trouble here. There is more to come. Look at that again. There is no mortal man who shall turn unhurt his life's curse to an end not marred. Everyone suffers pain. Think of the line in the film The Princess Bride. Life is pain, Highness. That's what the chorus is saying there. The chorus is saying, you might think you've solved your problem, but there's trouble here. And there's more to come. Orestes, page 120, line 1021. I would have you know, I see not how this thing will end. That is, I don't know how this is going to be resolved. I don't see the end of this, right? We reach a decision, we act on that decision. Do we know what all the consequences are going to be? No, not at all. I am a charioteer whose course is wrenched outside the track. That is, I'm now outside where I thought I would be. For I am beaten, my rebellious senses bolt with me headlong, and the fear against my heart is ready for the singing and dance of wrath. That is, he's kind of like saying, my heart is pounding, and I know something bad is coming. But while I hold some grip still on my wits, that is, while I'm still sane, I say publicly to my friends, I killed my mother not without some right. He admits, I did it. But he also says, and I was at least partially right for doing so. My father's murder stained her. She was covered in the stain of his death and the gods' disgust. As for the spells that charmed me to such daring, I cite above all the seer of Pytho, Loxias, that is, Apollo. The spells that charmed me. Notice he is suggesting he wasn't acting entirely of his own free will. He's essentially saying, Apollo made me do this. He declared I could do this and not be charged with wrong. Apollo said, you can kill your mother, you can kill Clytemnestra, and you will not be guilty of it. While if I refused, the punishment, I wouldn't even go there. Now look upon me, how I go armored in leafed branch and garland on my way to the center stone, the sanctuary and Apollo's sacred ground. That is, he's now going to bring offering to Apollo and essentially say, you got to help me. The shining of the fabulous fire that never dies, to escape this blood that is my own. That is his mother's blood. He shed his own blood in shedding his mother's blood. Loxias ordained that I should turn me to no other shrine than his. That is, Apollo said, once you kill your mother, come back to me. I go an outcast wanderer from this land and leave behind in life and death the name of what I did. The chorus says, no, what you did was well done. Just don't hold it inside. Orestes, 10:48. Women who serve this house, they come like gorgons. They wear robes of black. They are wreathed in a tangle of snakes. I can no longer stay. What does he mean, women who serve this house? Why does he describe them as like gorgons? Okay. Nobody else sees these women. These are the Furies. It's like the Furies have risen up out of the ground. They're dressed all in black. They look like gorgons, like Medusa, the snakes that would turn, men to stone if they saw her face and such. He's saying these things are so frightening, they're so horrible. I can't stay here. They're going to get me. I've got to go to Apollo's. And they say, Orestes, the chorus leader, Orestes, dearest to your father of all men, what fancies whirl you? Fancies there means fantasies. What phantasms? What fanciful images? What hallucinations and delusions? Whirl you. Whirl means to be turned without any thought, without any action by oneself. Like he's being spun around. Come on, tell us. Don't give way to fear. These are no fancies of affliction. He says they are clear and real, and here the bloodhounds of my mother's hate. These are the curses that she called down upon me. Orestes calls out to Apollo. top of page 122. Ah, Lord Apollo, how they grow and multiply, repulsive for the blood drops of their dripping eyes. And we have written accounts of what the Furies, of what their masks looked like when this play was performed. Right? Bear in mind, when the ancient Greek tragedies were performed, the actors wore masks. Okay? So that we couldn't see how an actor would make the character seem real and all that because of these masks. So these masks have blood dripping from them. All right? Chorus, there is one way to make you clean. Let Loxias Apollo touch you and set you free from these disturbances. Orestes, you can't see them, but I am. See, the chorus leader thinks it's all psychological. You're overcome with guilt. Orestes is like, this isn't mere guilt. They're really there. I am driven from this place. I can stay here no longer. Chorus, good luck go with you, and may the God look on you with favor and guard you in kind circumstance. And then the chorus gets the final word of the play. Here on this house of the kings, the third storm has broken, with wind from the inward race, and gone its course. The children were eaten. That's Thyestes' children. That was the first affliction, the curse of Thyestes. Next came the royal death. That's Agamemnon's, when a man and lord of Achaean armies went down killed in the bath. Third is for the Savior, Orestes. He came. Shall I call it that or death? That is, call it that, the Savior. Where is the end? That is, when will the cycle stop? What will be the outcome? Where shall the fury of hate be stilled to sleep, be done with? Where shall the fury of vengeance be stopped? All right? The chorus is asking, chorus is suggesting, this isn't justice. This is not justice by any means. This is something else. How can we bring this curse to a peaceful resolution? Okay? And that's what is going to be solved in the next play, in the Eumenides. Okay? Notice the next play is called the Eumenides. It means the blessed ones, the blissful ones. It's not titled the Furies. And the reason for that, to give the end away, is because we're going to see the Furies transformed into the blessed ones. And I'll do that in another lecture.